Before there were wires, there were whispers. Before computers, there was communion. Long before algorithms traced our desires and screens mediated our connections, African civilizations communed with a deeper code. One written in fire and water, in bone and breath, in the rhythms of ritual and the echoes of spirit. This code lived in ceremonies passed from mouth to ear, in names given at birth, in the trance of a drumbeat. It was a form of intelligence, not artificial, but ancestral, a system, a circuit, a technology. But what is spiritual technology? It is the ability to alter reality through the unseen. It is how a libation poured in silence can rebalance a household. How a name spoken in prayer can rewrite a destiny. It is a system where chants replace passwords and oracles replace search engines. Spiritual technology is the infrastructure of the soul. Rituals, symbols, movements, and stories that serve as scripts to shape the world not by force, but by frequency. In this world, belief isn't superstition, it's software. And each ceremony is a line of code. So here's the question we must ask. What if the ancestors didn't just pray? What if they programmed reality? What if the rituals weren't simply expressions of faith, but executable commands in a spiritual operating system? What if every mask carved, every proverb spoken, every trance entered was part of a larger algorithm? One designed not only to survive colonization and chaos, but to spiritually maintain the balance of the cosmos. In this film, we'll explore that idea through 4 powerful portals of ancestral intelligence. First, ritual, the sacred programming language that encodes intention into action. Second, divination, the operating system of the spirit designed to retrieve truth from the unseen. Third, trance, the moment when the body becomes a vessel and spirit interface with flesh. And finally, orature, the encrypted archive of our ancestral knowledge where memory and wisdom are passed through breath, not books. These are not metaphors. These are technologies, as structured, as intentional, and as powerful as anything wired or wireless. This is the code beneath the sand, and it still speaks. Ritual is the first language of technology. Long before humans wrote code or built machines, they gathered in circles, marked the earth, spoke invocations, and moved in rhythm with the cosmos. Ritual is intentional action performed with spiritual precision. It is how communities align the physical with the metaphysical, how they signal to the unseen forces of the universe that they are ready to act, to receive, to transform. If spiritual technology has a syntax, then ritual is its grammar, structuring the invisible into the tangible. To understand ritual is to understand that nothing is random in a spiritually awake culture. Every gesture, every chant, every offering is encoded with purpose. In ritual, intention is not a thought, it's an action performed over and over until it rewires reality. Just as a line of computer code activates a function, a ritual command activates energy. Pouring water to the ancestors is not simply remembrance, it is a transmission. Lighting a fire is not mere tradition, it is a beacon. Speaking a name aloud is not nostalgia, it is invocation. Take, for instance, the libation ceremony in Ghana. A gourd of water or gin is poured onto the ground, often in silence or with prayer, invoking the presence of ancestors and spiritual guides. The act looks simple, but it is a multi-layered transmission. Water carries memory, the earth receives the offering, and the words spoken charge the act with intentional frequency. In that moment, time folds. The past is present, and the future is being rewritten. The libation is not just a cultural gesture. It's a sacred protocol for spiritual synchronization. In Kenya, naming ceremonies reflect another dimension of ritual technology. When a child is named, it is not just for identification, it is an act of coding. The name carries ancestral lineage, spiritual attributes, cosmic timing. Elders consult signs, dreams, or even spiritual diviners to find the right name. This is because the name itself is believed to shape the destiny of the child. Nia, meaning purpose. Baraka, meaning blessing. Achieng, meaning born when the sun shines. Each name carries not just sound, but signal. It programs the child's place in the world and the universe's response to them. In Angola, ancestral worship ceremonies involve offerings, drumming, and invocations to appease and honor the spirits of the departed. These rituals are not passive. They are interactive portals where the living communicates with the dead, ask for guidance, apologize for transgressions, and request protection. These rites maintain the balance of power between the seen and the unseen. If left undone, it is believed the ancestral forces might become restless or withdraw their support. The ceremony is therefore a relational code. Keep the protocol, and the power stays online. The symbols used in rituals are also part of this spiritual syntax. Fire purifies and transforms. Water cleanses and transmits memory. The kola nut, often broken and shared in Igbo ceremonies, is not just a snack. It is a sacred interface, an offering to the ancestors and a seal of communal intent. Circles signify infinity and wholeness, creating sacred space where time becomes suspended. Blood, the ultimate offering, represents life itself, the most powerful transaction in any ritual economy. Masks are not decorations but vessels, worn during trance or performance to allow spirits to ride into the human realm. Each symbol is not arbitrary. Each one is a key, opening a specific door in the spiritual architecture of the community. When seen through this lens, ritual becomes not just tradition, but transmission, the delivery system of spiritual power. It is how a people reprogram reality when life goes off balance. When drought strikes, they dance and chant for rain. When a loved one passes, they perform rites to ensure safe passage and communal healing. When a home is built, it is first blessed to align it with cosmic forces. Nothing is left to chance. Everything is designed. Ritual, then, is the sacred programming language of African spiritual systems. It is the invisible engine that keeps the visible world turning. It does what modern technology aspires to do: bind communities, transmit data, and shape environments, but it does so with soul. It is not controlled by wires or chips, but by memory, music, intention, and ancestral wisdom. Where modern science says input equals output, ritual says intention plus alignment equals transformation. It doesn't just express meaning, it creates it. To dismiss a ritual as superstition is to misunderstand its sophistication. It is not performative, it is powerful. These are not random gestures of old times, but carefully crafted systems for maintaining spiritual balance, community integrity, and personal alignment. Ritual is how African civilizations coded their survival into culture. It is how they encoded resilience, resistance, and renewal into every birth, every deed, every harvest, every prayer. And so, we return to the idea. If ritual is code, then every gesture is a command, every chant a password, every offering an upload. And when done with reverence and alignment, the result is not merely spiritual comfort, it is spiritual activation. This is the sacred technology of ritual. If ritual is the sacred programming language, then divination is the operating system, the core interface through which spiritual data is retrieved, decoded, and translated into guidance for the living. Divination is not guesswork. It is not mere superstition. It is an ancient system of intelligence gathering, rooted in deep cosmology, mathematical structure, symbolism, and the principle that everything visible has an invisible cause. Just as modern societies rely on data analysis to understand the patterns shaping economies or ecosystems, traditional African societies turn to divination to understand the subtle patterns shaping their lives. Divination is the practice of asking the unseen world questions and receiving structured, interpretable answers. It is the art and science of communication with forces beyond the reach of the five senses, ancestors, spirits, and deities who see not only what is but what will be, and what lies buried in the past. It is both diagnostic and prescriptive. The diviner is not a magician, but a technician of the sacred, trained to read signs, interpret symbols, and advise on the energetic currents that flow beneath the surface of events. Across Africa, the tools of divination vary by region, but the principle remains the same. Open a portal, receive information, act on it with respect. Among the Yoruba people of Nigeria, cowrie shells are used in the Ifa oracle system. The Babalawo, the priest of Ifa, casts the shells or uses palm nuts and records their fall into binary-like patterns called Odu. Each Odu corresponds to a vast body of oral literature containing proverbs, myths, and instructions that guide the client. The Babalawo doesn't merely interpret the pattern, he downloads sacred stories that hold the key to the seeker's problem, then prescribes rituals to realign their life with destiny. Among the Berber people of North Africa, diviners draw sacred diagrams in sand, geometric shapes, lines, and symbols that communicate messages from the spiritual realm. Each stroke is part of a language older than ink. Among the Zulu, bones are tossed onto sacred cloths. The way they land, pointing toward each other, away, on top of one another, forms a sentence. The bones may include pieces of animal vertebrae, shells, or carved wood, each representing specific forces or ancestors. The Sangoma or traditional Hilate reads this configuration to detect spiritual imbalances, family secrets, ancestral displeasure, or impending transitions. In the Igbo tradition, the Afa system of divination is a powerful spiritual processor. Afa operates through coded language and symbolic resonance, allowing trained diviners to diagnose the root causes of misfortune, decipher ancestral messages, and map out the soul's trajectory. Using sacred instruments and rhythmic speech, the diviner tunes into a vibrational frequency where destiny can be seen and reconfigured. Afa is not simply about foretelling events, it is about restoring harmony. In Afa, the future is not fixed, it is fluid, responsive to correction, sacrifice, and spiritual alignment. Another exemplary system is Fa divination, practiced by the Fon people of Benin. Here, the Bokonon, or priest, uses strings of nuts or carved sticks to cast combinations that correspond to sacred verses in an oral corpus. The verses are then spoken aloud, often poetic, parabolic, and rich in metaphor, offering insight into everything from fertility and illness to legal disputes and migration. Each session of Fa is a negotiation between the seen and unseen, and each solution is tailored not just to the event, but to the spirit behind it. Across these systems, the purpose is always the same: to decode the why behind the what. Why is a family suffering repeated deaths? Why can a woman not conceive? Why does a young man feel lost, restless, sick? The diviner enters the metaphysical realm, not to provide vague predictions, but to trace the energetic and ancestral lines causing disruption. They identify spiritual debts, broken covenants, ignored taboos. Once the source is located, they prescribe rituals, offerings, or life changes to restore equilibrium. Divination in this way becomes not just a window but a mirror, reflecting what the client needs to confront in order to grow. In our digital age, it is tempting to think of knowledge as purely empirical, measurable only through microscopes or spreadsheets. But diviners, like ancient IT specialists of the soul, access a different kind of cloud, a metaphysical archive, rich with encrypted ancestral data. Their servers are sacred groves. Their firewalls are chants. Their search engines are oracles that speak not in code but through it. They understand that healing requires diagnosis, and that wisdom lies not just in the mind, but in the spirit circuitry. Divination systems across Africa are deeply sophisticated. They are calibrated over generations, built on oral libraries, symbolic fluency, and a worldview in which the invisible is primary. To dismiss them is to ignore thousands of years of spiritual epistemology. Not superstition, but strategy. Not fantasy, but framework. These systems do not just answer questions. They recalibrate paths. They challenge the ego. They reconnect the seeker with their destiny. So the next time someone tells you that ancient Africa had no science, no systems, no intelligence, tell them about the Ifa priests who memorized thousands of verses, the Igbo Dibayas who decoded misfortune through vibration, the Sangomas who read the bones like software. Tell them that spiritual data retrieval is not just real, it is refined. Tell them that the ancestors had operating systems and the wise still log in. Trance is the gateway between worlds. The moment when breath slows, vision blurs, and the spirit steps forward. In the realm of ancestral technology, trance is not madness or myth. It is a controlled, intentional state of spiritual interface. It is an altered consciousness that allows the human body to serve as a vessel for other forms of intelligence, ancestors, deities, spirits of nature, and cosmic forces. Trance is how the divine downloads wisdom directly into flesh. It is not metaphorical, it is functional. The body becomes more than blood and bone. It becomes a medium. In African spiritual systems, trance is both sacred and scientific. It is induced through rhythm, ritual, and intention. Drums are not just instruments, they are triggers. The smell of incense is not just fragrance, it is a signal. Movement, repetition, sound, and invocation form a code that opens the mind, loosens the grip of ordinary awareness, and invites spiritual presence. Once in trance, the individual is no longer just themselves. They are a bridge, a translator, a sacred conduit between the visible and the invisible. In Yoruba tradition, trance is integral to ceremonies involving the Egungun, ancestral masquerades, and Orisha possession, particularly Sango, the deity of thunder. During festivals, devotees of Sango dance until they are overtaken by his spirit. Their movements become erratic, powerful, electric. Their voices change. Sometimes they speak in unknown tongues. This is not performance. It is possession. The community gathers not to observe, but to witness the divine embodied. Messages are delivered. Blessings are given. Sometimes warnings are spoken. The possessed become a temporary archives of sacred instruction. Among the Sangomas of Southern Africa, trance is central to healing. Sangomas are not only herbalists and dream interpreters, they are trained to enter deep trance states to commune with ancestors. In initiation, they may spend days dancing, fasting, or isolating until the veil lifts. In trance, they receive diagnosis for patients, guidance for rituals or visions of past lives, and unresolved ancestral trauma. These experiences are often accompanied by physical shifts, shivering, weeping, or trembling. But to the initiated, these are not signs of distress. They are signs of download. The system is receiving. In the communities of the Fon and Ogu peoples of West Africa, the Zangbeto appear as towering, raffia-covered figures who spin rapidly during ceremonies. They represent the guardians of the night, spiritual entities that emerge to protect, cleanse, and judge. During their trance dances, the humans beneath the raffia disappear. What remains is the force of the Zangbeto itself. People speak of the trance as full transformation, a kind of sacred erasure where the ego dissolves and only the spirit animates the body. They clean the psychic space of a village, ward off dark forces, and sometimes reveal hidden crimes or misdeeds, acting as moral enforcers in the spiritual realm. Trance, in all its forms, is not chaos. It is protocol. It is one of the most advanced tools of spiritual technology, allowing communication without language, healing without medicine, justice without police. It is not hallucination, it is reception. Just as a device receives a software update, the trance state allows a person to receive updates to their consciousness, their karma, their role in the collective. They emerge altered, sometimes exhausted, sometimes radiant by the band, but never untouched. Trance also serves a community function. It is never only personal. The one who goes into trance carries not just their own concerns, but the needs of the group. They become oracles, vessels, warnings, blessings. Their bodies become sacred scrolls. In the West, altered states are often seen as solitary and internal. Guided meditations, silent retreats, introspective journeys. But in African cosmologies, trance is relational. It happens in public. It happens with drums, with fire, with eyes watching. It is held, witnessed, respected. This begs a reflection. Have you ever felt moved by something that was not quite you? Have you ever said words you didn't plan, walked away from disaster without knowing how, dreamt something before it happened? Have you ever been protected by a force you couldn't name but couldn't deny? These are echoes of trance, soft downloads that happen even outside ritual, in dreams, in danger, in prayer. You may be more connected than you realize. And yet, in modernity, trance has been misunderstood, pathologized, and stripped of its sacred meaning. In colonial narratives, it was labeled hysteria or backwardness. In psychological terms, it became dissociation. But in ancestral terms, it is activation. It is the soul remembering its passwords and logging into a dimension where spirit leads. The tragedy is not that trance is wild. It's that we forgot how to enter it safely, reverently, wisely. But the knowledge still exists. The drums still beat. The elders still whisper. The body still remembers. And in some parts of the world, trance is still practiced not as entertainment, but as sacred work. A return to trance is not a regression. It is a reconnection. It is a returning to a deeper source of power, one not controlled by the mind, but carried by the spirit. Because when the body becomes a vessel, the soul becomes a bridge. And when spirits interface with the human form, what is received is not just presence, it is programming. The divine enters, speaks, heals, and leaves behind a changed vessel. And this too is technology. Orature is the ancestral archive without shelves, a living library encoded in memory, sound, and breath. It is oral literature, but far more than mere storytelling. Orature encompasses songs, proverbs, chants, riddles, praise poems, names, and parables. It is knowledge transmitted through voice and body, not pen and paper. In societies where the spoken word was more sacred than the written, orature became the vessel through which history, cosmology, ethics, and identity were preserved across generations. It is not simply what is said, it is how it's said, when, by whom, and in what rhythm or tone. Orature is not a relic, it is a technology designed to embed wisdom into the collective memory of a people. While modern data lives in hard drives, ancestral data lived in human hearts and mouths. To speak was to remember. To listen was to receive. To recite was to activate. The function of orature is multifaceted. It preserves laws and moral codes. It teaches cosmological truths about the origin and order of the universe. It encodes survival tactics, spiritual practices, and genealogical roots. In a world constantly under threat of erasure through colonization, migration, or war, orature was the encryption system that safeguarded the soul of the community. Proverbs are one of the most powerful forms of orature. They are compressed wisdom, poetic algorithms that condense entire philosophies into a single sentence. They teach without preaching. They warn without accusing. They instruct without explaining. A proverb might say, "A man who does not know where the rain began to beat him cannot know where he dried his body." On the surface, it's poetic, but encoded in its rhythm is a profound truth. If you don't understand the origin of your suffering, you cannot know when or how healing began. This is diagnostic wisdom. A single phrase shaped by metaphor contains layers of historical memory, spiritual insight, and psychological depth. Naming too is a form of orature, not just a label, but a declaration. Names are spiritual declarations spoken into being. They carry intention, ancestry, prophecy. Among the Igbo, a name like Chinonso, meaning God is near, is not simply beautiful, it is protective. It reminds the bearer, and all who speak it, of divine proximity. In Ghana, Nana Ama might signify royalty and the day of birth. In Swahili, Eshe means life. Each name encodes a story, a history, a vibration. When names are spoken, they activate identity and summon ancestral energies into the present. Songs too carry coded information. Lullabies teach values. Work songs build rhythm and reinforce unity. War chants boost morale and pass hidden signals. Praise poems preserve genealogies and map social hierarchies. Each form of orature serves a different function but draws from the same source. Memory as technology, sound as storage, rhythm as transmission. Orature also adapts. It is not frozen in time. Griots in West Africa still recite lineages centuries old. In Afro-diasporic religions like Santeria or Vodou, chants in ancient languages are used to call deities into ceremonies. Even contemporary hip-hop, spoken word, and Afrobeat lyrics echo the ancestral mode, weaving storytelling, rhythm, and coded social critique into sound. The form evolves, but the function remains: to preserve, to teach, to empower. To listen to orature is to access the encrypted archive of the ancestors, not stored in stone, but carved into the collective breath of a people. It's not just about preserving the past, but ensuring the future. In a world flooded with disposable data and forgettable content, orature reminds us that memory can be sacred, that language can carry soul, that words, when spoken with intention, become seeds, growing wisdom in those who dare to listen. Among the many spiritual technologies across the African continent, few are as intricate and symbolically dense as the Igbo system. Rooted in the cosmological framework of Odinani, the Igbo understanding of reality is not just philosophical, but programmable. A system where laws, energies, names, and symbols converge to create and recalibrate existence. Odinani is often translated as the law of the land, but in truth, it is more profound. It is the cosmic operating system through which balance is maintained between the visible and the invisible, the human and the divine, the ancestral and the yet unborn. Odinani is not a static doctrine but a fluid spiritual science. It outlines the structure of the universe, the nature of divinity, the roles of humans, and the flow of destiny. Central to Odinani is the belief that everything has chi, a personal spirit or divine spark, which acts as a spiritual twin and guide. Chi is unique to each person and tied directly to their purpose, their gifts, and their spiritual contract with the universe. This makes destiny not accidental, but encoded. Life becomes a journey of decoding and aligning with one's Chi. To walk in truth is to walk in alignment with cosmic law. When misalignment occurs, illness, misfortune, barrenness, repeated failure, the Igbo turn to Afa, their system of divination. Afa is not guesswork or vague insight, it is a deeply structured spiritual diagnostic tool. The diviner, often a trained dibia, uses sacred instruments to enter a state of heightened awareness and decode the client's spiritual data. Through rhythmic speech, symbols, and spirit-assisted communication, the dibia can identify the root of problems, ancestral disruptions, or spiritual deaths. Afa reveals not just what is wrong, but why it happened and how to fix it. It is spiritual debugging, correcting code that has gone awry. Afa is often misunderstood as merely prophetic, but it is more corrective than predictive. It is used to interpret dreams, detect the presence of malevolent forces, or determine the right timing for major life events. In doing so, Afa acts as a spiritual GPS, recalibrating the individual's path toward alignment with their Chi. It is a system rooted in observation, spiritual literacy, and ancestral communion, passed down through oral memory and deep apprenticeship. At the heart of Igbo, spiritual ethics are the twin principles of Ofo and Ogu. Ofo is both a physical staff and a metaphysical force, representing divine justice, truth, and authority. Ofo is held by elders, priests, and diviners when invoking spiritual laws. It is the symbolic backbone of moral governance. When someone swears by Ofo, they are submitting their words to cosmic judgment. Ogu, on the other hand, is the inner sense of righteousness, the personal energy of truthfulness, fairness, and spiritual cleanliness. Together, Ofo and Ogu function as the moral circuitry that governs not just the individual, but the entire community. They are the ethical firewalls of the Igbo cosmos, preventing moral corruption and spiritual decay. Central to this system are the Dibias, the spiritual technicians and sacred scientists of the Igbo world. A Dibia is not merely a healer or priest. They are a conduit between worlds, trained in herbs, symbols, dreams, trance, and cosmological law. They are the keepers of Odinani's most hidden codes. Through long years of training, often marked by isolation, spirit possession, or initiation, Dibias learn to enter trance states to commune with ancestors and spirits. In trance, they receive knowledge that cannot be accessed through ordinary consciousness. They become living bridges, the embodiment of spiritual technology. Trance for the Dibia is not a performance. It is a sacred calibration. Their body becomes the portal through which ancestral data is received, processed, and translated into ritual action or spoken guidance. They may prescribe an offering, a cleansing, a name change, or a pilgrimage. Their role is not just to heal, but to align, to bring human behavior, thought, and speech back into harmony with Odinani's cosmic rhythm. Even names in the Igbo system are far more than identifiers. They are spiritual algorithms. A name like Chinonso, God is nearby, or Nkechi, what God has given, is more than poetic. It is prophetic. It encodes the spiritual identity of the person and often reflects the circumstances of their birth or the spiritual vision of the family. Naming ceremonies are therefore not just celebrations, they are acts of spiritual programming. A well-chosen name resonates with the child's chi and sets a vibrational tone for their life path. When a name is changed, it signals a shift in destiny, a spiritual reconfiguration. Orature plays a crucial role in preserving and transmitting these codes. The proverbs, chants, and praise poems spoken at divinations, initiations, and rituals encode complex teachings in metaphor and rhythm. They ensure that the laws of ordinary are not only known but remembered, carried not just in the mind but in the mouth, in the drumbeat, in the breath. To the Igbo, the world is not static. It is code, and the spirit writes in symbols, not ink. This belief animates every act of spiritual inquiry, every dance, every sacrifice, every birth. The universe is not a fixed structure, but a living system of patterns and permissions. Life is navigated through symbol, intention, and spiritual literacy. To live well is to understand the code, to walk in rhythm with the chi, speak truth with ofo, remain clean with ogu, seek clarity through afa, and consult the dibia when the path becomes unclear. The Igbo system is not primitive. It is precise. It is not broken. It is encrypted. And for those who have ears to hear and hearts to remember, its wisdom is still accessible, still alive, and still downloading. These spiritual technologies are not relics buried in dust. They are seeds, and they are sprouting again. Across the world, particularly within the African diaspora, there is a quiet and powerful return. Shrines are being rebuilt in backyards and basements. Naming ceremonies once seen as cultural relics are now sacred acts of reclamation. Ancestral festivals are no longer dismissed as folklore, but celebrated as frameworks of identity. People are searching for the sacred languages their ancestors once spoke, not out of nostalgia, but out of a need for spiritual grounding in a world that often feels fragmented and rootless. In this resurgence, we are witnessing what might be called an Afro-spiritual renaissance. Musicians channel ancestral rhythms into beats that heal and awaken. Wellness practitioners are blending ancestral rituals with modern self-care, cleansing not just with herbs, but with memory. Healers are drawing from traditional practices, offering spiritual consultations that go beyond diagnosis into deep ancestral alignment. There is a hunger, not just for belief, but for system, for ceremony, for codes that restore meaning in a world oversaturated with noise. And the relevance is clear. Where therapy addresses the mind, Afa addresses the soul. While Western psychology may ask, what happened to you? Afa asks, what happened before you? It invites ancestral context into the conversation of healing. Where modern legal systems often fail to deliver moral clarity, the principles of Ofo, truth and justice aligned with cosmic law, offer a compass not just for what is legal, but what is spiritually just. And in a digital age overwhelmed by fleeting information, orature serves as the antidote to algorithmic forgetting. It anchors memory not in the cloud, but in the voice. Human, rhythmic, sacred. These are not just systems of the past. They are living frameworks for those willing to remember. They offer structure, language, and intelligence in a time when so much feels uncertain. And they do so not with arrogance, but with reverence, reminding us that we do not walk alone, that we are the sum of many voices, many codes, many names. To revive these technologies is not to reject modern life, but to root it. To return not to the old, but to the original. To log back in. Our ancestors were not primitive. They were precise. In a world that often measures intelligence through machines and innovation through metal and glass, we must remind ourselves that knowledge can also be wrapped in song, coded in symbols, and passed through trance. The spiritual systems explored in this journey, ritual, divination, trance, and orature, are not accidental expressions of culture. They are technologies. Not just spiritual practices, but structured, intentional systems designed to preserve memory, to enact healing, to deliver justice, and to anchor identity. This was never about folklore. It was never about nostalgia. This is about code, ancient, encrypted, and enduring. Every libation poured, every proverb recited, every trance entered, and every name whispered into a newborn's ear carries with it a vibration that speaks to eternity. These are the hard drives of the soul, the memory banks of the collective, the spiritual protocols that allowed our ancestors not only to survive but to thrive under pressures that sought to erase them. As you walk away from this video, let this not just be information you consumed, but wisdom you carry. Carry it into how you speak your name, how you remember your elders, how you seek your healing, how you speak to the invisible. Let this be an invitation, not to return to the past, but to reawaken what still lives in you. To explore your chi, to learn your name's vibration, to listen to the drumbeat behind your daily routines, because the spirit still writes, and you are one of its sentences. So here is a blessing for the spiritually curious. May the chi of your ancestors awaken your inner code. May the flame of orature guide your night. And may you remember, not just where you came from, but who you've always been. If this journey stirred something ancient in you, if it reminded you that the unseen is not empty, but intelligent, then honor that feeling. Speak it, share it, name it, comment below with what resonated, with what you remember. Subscribe not just to this channel, but to your own spiritual search, because there are more codes to uncover, more voices to remember. Thank you for watching, for listening, for remembering. The ancestors see you.